Chapter 16. The princess sat in her armchair, silent and smiling. The prince sat down beside her. Kitty stood by her father's chair, still holding his hand. The princess was the first to put everything into words and to translate all thoughts and feelings into practical questions, and all equally felt this strange and painful for the first minute. When is it to be? We must have the benediction and announcement. And when is the wedding to be? What do you think, Alexander? Here he is, said the old prince, pointing to Levin. He's the principal person in the matter. When? Said Levin, blushing. Tomorrow, if you ask me. I should say, the benediction today and the wedding tomorrow. Come, mon cher, that is nonsense. Well, then, in a week. He's quite gone mad. No, why so? Well, upon my word, said the mother, smiling, delighted at this haste. How about the trousseau? Will there really be a trousseau and all that? Levin thought with horror. But can the trousseau and the benediction and all that, can it spoil my happiness? Nothing can spoil it. He glanced at Kitty and noticed that she was not in the least, not in the very least, disturbed by the idea of the trousseau. Then it must be all right, he thought. Oh, I know nothing about it. I only said what I should like, he said apologetically. We'll talk it over then. The benediction and announcement can take place now. The princess went up to her husband, kissed him, and would have gone away, but he kept her, embraced her, and tenderly as a young lover kissed her several times, smiling. The old couple were obviously muddled for a moment, and did not quite know whether it was they who were in love again, or their daughter. When the prince and the princess had gone, Levin went up to his betrothed and took her hand. He was self-possessed now and could speak, and he had a great deal he wanted to tell her. But he said not at all what he had to say. How I knew it would be so! I never hoped for it, and yet in my heart I was always sure, he said. I believe it was ordained. And I, she said, even when... She stopped and went on again, looking at him resolutely with her truthful eyes. Even when I thrust from me my happiness, I always loved you alone, but I was carried away. Can you forgive that? Perhaps it was for the best. You will have much to forgive me for. I ought to tell you. This was one of the things he had meant to speak about. He had resolved from the first to tell her two things. That he was not chaste as she was, and that he was not a believer. It was agonizing, but he considered he ought to tell her both these facts. No, not now, later, he said. Very well, later, but you must certainly tell me. I'm not afraid of anything. I want to know everything. Now it is settled. He added, settled that you'll take me whatever I may be? You won't give me up? Yes? Yes, yes. Their conversation was interrupted by Mademoiselle Linon, who with an affected but tender smile came to congratulate her favorite pupil. Before she had gone, the servants came in with their congratulations. Then relations arrived, and there began that state of blissful absurdity from which Levin did not emerge till the day after his wedding. Levin was in a continual state of awkwardness and discomfort, but the intensity of his happiness went on all the while increasing. He felt continually that a great deal was being expected of him. what he did not know, and he did everything he was told, and it all gave him happiness. He had thought his engagement would have nothing about it like others, that the ordinary conditions of engaged couples would spoil his special happiness. But it ended in doing exactly as other people did, and his happiness being only increased thereby, and becoming more and more special, more and more unlike anything that had ever happened. "Now we shall have sweetmeats to eat," said Mademoiselle Linon, and Levin drove off to buy sweetmeats. "Well, I am very glad," said Vronsky. "I advise you to get the bouquets from Fomin's." "Oh, are they wanted?" And he drove to Fomin's. His brother offered to lend him money, as he would have so many expenses, presents to give. "Oh, are presents wanted?" And he galloped to Fold's. And at the confectioner's, and at Fomin's, and at Fold's, he saw that he was expected, that they were pleased to see him, and prided themselves on his happiness, just as everyone whom he had to do with during those days. What was extraordinary was that everyone not only liked him, but even people previously unsympathetic, cold, and callous, or enthusiastic over him, gave way to him in everything, treated his feeling with tenderness and delicacy, and shared his conviction that he was the happiest man in the world because his betrothed was beyond perfection. Kitty, too, felt the same thing. When Countess Nordstrom ventured to hint that she had hoped for a better match, Kitty was so angry and proved so conclusively that nothing in the world could be better than Levin, that Countess Nordstrom had to admit it, and in Kitty's presence never met Levin without a smile of ecstatic admiration. The confession he had promised was the one painful incident of this time. He consulted the old prince, and with his sanction gave Kitty his diary, in which there was written the confession that tortured him. He had written this diary at a time with a view to his future wife. Two things caused him anguish: his lack of purity and his lack of faith. His confession of unbelief passed unnoticed. She was religious, had never doubted the truth of religion, but his external unbelief did not affect her in the least. Through love she knew all his soul, and in his soul she saw what she wanted, and that such a state of soul should be called unbelieving was to her a matter of no account. The other confession set her weeping bitterly. Levin, not without an inner struggle, handed her his diary. He knew that between him and her there could not be and should not be any secret, and so he had decided that so it must be. But he had not realized what an effect it would have on her. He had not put himself in her place. It was only when, the same evening, he came to their house before the theater, went into her room, and saw her tear-stained, pitiful, sweet face, miserable with suffering he had caused and nothing could undo, he felt the abyss that separated his shameful past from her dove-like purity, and was appalled at what he had done. "Take them. Take these dreadful books," she said, pushing away the notebooks lying before her on the table. "Why did you give them me? No, it was better anyway," she added, touched by his despairing face. "But it's awful, awful." His head sank, and he was silent. He could say nothing. "You can't forgive me," he whispered. "Yes, I forgive you, but it's terrible." But his happiness was so immense that this confession did not shatter it. It only added another shade to it. She forgave him, but from that time more than ever he considered himself unworthy of her, morally bowed down lower than ever before her, and prized more highly than ever his undeserved happiness. Chapter 17. Unconsciously going over in his memory the conversations that had taken place during and after dinner, Alexey Alexandrovitch returned to his solitary room. Darya Alexandrovna's words about forgiveness had aroused in him nothing but annoyance. The applicability or non-applicability of the Christian precept to his own case was too difficult a question to be discussed lightly, and this question had long ago been answered by Alexey Alexandrovitch in the negative. Of all that had been said, what stuck most in his memory was the phrase of stupid, good-natured Turovstin. Acted like a man, he did, called him out and shot him. Everyone had apparently shared his feeling, though from politeness they had not expressed it. But the matter is settled. It's useless thinking about it, Alexey Alexandrovitch told himself. In thinking of nothing but the journey before him and the revision work he had to do, he went into his room and asked the porter who escorted him where his man was. The porter said that the man had only just gone out. Alexey Alexandrovitch ordered tea to be sent him, sat down to the table, and taking the guidebook, began considering the route of his journey. 2 telegrams, said his manservant, coming into the room. I beg your pardon, Your Excellency, I'd only just that minute gone out. Alexey Alexandrovitch took the telegrams and opened them. The first telegram was the announcement of Sternov's appointment to the very post Karenina had coveted. Alexey Alexandrovitch flung the telegram down, and flushing a little, got up and began to pace up and down the room. Quos vult perdere demandat, he said, meaning by quos the persons responsible for this appointment. He was not so much annoyed that he had not received the post, that he had been conspicuously passed over, but it was incomprehensible, amazing to him that they did not see that the wordy phrasemonger Stremov was the last man fit for it. How could they fail to see that they were ruining themselves, lowering their prestige by this appointment? Something else in the same line, he said to himself bitterly, opening the second telegram. The telegram was from his wife. Her name, written in blue pencil, Anna, was the first thing that caught his eye. I am dying. I beg, I implore you to come. I shall die easier with your forgiveness, he read. He smiled contemptuously and flung down the telegram. That this was a trick and a fraud, of that, he thought for the first minute, there could be no doubt. There is no deceit she would stop at. She was near her confinement. Perhaps it is the confinement, but what can be their aim? To legitimize the child? To compromise me and prevent a divorce? He thought. But something was said in it. I am dying. He read the telegram again, and suddenly the plain meaning of what was said in it struck him. And if it is true, he said to himself, if it is true that in the moment of agony and nearness to death she is genuinely penitent, and I, taking it for a trick, refuse to go, that would not only be cruel, and everyone would blame me, but it would be stupid on my part. Pyotr, call a coach. I am going to Petersburg, he said to his servant. Alexey Alexandrovitch decided he would go to Petersburg and see his wife. If her illness was a trick, he would say nothing and go away again. If she was really in danger and wished to see him before her death, he would forgive her if he found her alive, and pay her the last duties if he came too late. All the way he thought no more of what he ought to do. With a sense of weariness and uncleanness from the night spent in the train, in the early fog of Petersburg, Alexey Alexandrovitch drove through the deserted Nevsky and stared straight before him, not thinking of what was awaiting him. He could not think about it, because in picturing what would happen, he could not drive away the reflection that her death would at once remove all the difficulty of his position. Bakers, closed shops, night cabmen, porters sweeping the pavements flashed past his eyes, and he watched it all, trying to smother the thought of what was awaiting him, and what he dared not hope for, and yet was hoping for. He drove up to the steps. A sledge and a carriage with a coachman asleep stood at the entrance. As he went into the entry, Alexey Alexandrovitch, as it were, got out his resolution from the remotest corner of his brain and mastered it thoroughly. Its meaning ran, "If it's a trick, then calm contempt and departure. If truth, do what is proper." The porter opened the door before Alexey Alexandrovitch rang. The porter looked strange in an old coat, without a tie, and in slippers. "How is your mistress?" "A successful confinement yesterday." Alexey Alexandrovitch stopped short and turned white. He felt distinctly now how intensely he had longed for her death. "And how is she?" Corney, in his morning apron, ran downstairs. "Very ill," he answered. "There was a consultation yesterday, and the doctor's here now." "Take my things," said Alexey Alexandrovitch, and feeling some relief at the news that there was still hope of her death, he went into the hall. On the hat stand there was a military overcoat. Alexey Alexandrovitch noticed it and asked, "Who is here?" "The doctor, the midwife, and Count Vronsky." Alexey Alexandrovitch went into the inner rooms. In the drawing-room there was no one. At the sound of his steps there came out of the boudoir the midwife in a cap with lilac ribbons. She went up to Alexey Alexandrovitch, and with the familiarity given by the approach of death, took him by the arm and drew him towards the bedroom. "Thank God you've come. She keeps on about you and nothing but you," she said. "Make haste with the ice," the doctor's peremptory voice said from the bedroom. Alexey Alexandrovitch went into her boudoir. At the table, sitting sideways in a low chair, was Vronsky, his face hidden in his hands, weeping. He jumped up at the doctor's voice, took his hands from his face, and saw Alexey Alexandrovitch. Seeing the husband, he was so overwhelmed that he sat down again, drawing his head down to his shoulders as if he wanted to disappear. But he made an effort over himself, got up, and said, "She is dying. The doctors say there is no hope. I am entirely in your power. Only let me be here, though I am at your disposal. Alexey Alexandrovitch, seeing Vronsky's tears, felt a rush of that nervous emotion always produced in him by the sight of other people suffering, and turning away his face, he moved hurriedly to the door without hearing the rest of his words. From the bedroom came the sound of Anna's voice saying something. Her voice was lively, eager, with exceedingly distinct intonations. Alexey Alexandrovitch went into the bedroom and went up to the bed. She was lying turned with her face towards him. Her cheeks were flushed crimson. Her eyes glittered. Her little white hands thrust out from the sleeves of her dressing gown were playing with the quilt, twisting it about. It seemed as though she were not only well and blooming, but in the happiest frame of mind. She was talking rapidly, musically, and with exceptionally correct articulation and expressive intonation. "For Alexey, I'm speaking of Alexey Alexandrovitch. What a strange and awful thing that they are both Alexey, isn't it? Alexey would not refuse me. I should forget. He would forgive. But why doesn't he come? He's so good. He doesn't know himself how good he is. Oh, what agony. Give me some water, quick. Oh, that will be bad for her, my little girl. Oh, very well then. Give her to a nurse. Yes, I agree. It's better, in fact. He'll be coming. It will hurt him to see her. Give her to the nurse. Anna Arkadyevna, he has come. Here he is, said the midwife, trying to attract her attention to Alexey Alexandrovitch. Oh, what nonsense, Anna went on, not seeing her husband. No, give her to me. Give me my little one. He has not come yet. You say he won't forgive me because you don't know him. No one knows him. I'm the only one, and it was hard for me even. His eyes, I ought to know. Seryoza has the same eyes, and I can't bear to see them because of it. Has Seryoza had his dinner? I know everyone will forget him. He would not forget. Seryoza must be moved into the corner room, and Mariette must be asked to sleep with him. All of a sudden she shrank back, was silent, and in terror, as though expecting a blow, as though to defend herself, she raised her hands to her face. She had seen her husband. No, no, she began. I am not afraid of him. I am afraid of death. Alexey, come here. I am in a hurry because I have no time. I've not long left to live. The fever will begin directly, and I shall understand nothing more. Now I understand. I understand it all. I see it all. Alexey Alexandrovitch's wrinkled face wore an expression of agony. He took her by the hand and tried to say something, but he could not utter it. His lower lip quivered, but he still went on struggling with his emotion, and only now and then glanced at her. And each time he glanced at her, he saw her eyes gazing at him with such passionate and triumphant tenderness as he had never seen in them. Wait a minute. You don't know. Stay a little. She stopped, as though collecting her ideas. Yes, she began. Yes. This is what I wanted to say. Don't be surprised at me. I'm still the same. But there is another woman in me. I'm afraid of her. She loved that man, and I tried to hate you, and could not forget about her that used to be. I'm not that woman. Now I'm my real self, all myself. I'm dying now. I know I shall die. Ask him. Even now I feel... See here, the weights on my feet, on my hands, on my fingers. My fingers, see how huge they are. But this will soon all be over. Only one thing I want. Forgive me. Forgive me quite. I'm terrible. But my nurse used to tell me the holy martyr, what was her name? She was worse. And I'll go to Rome. There's a wilderness, and there I shall be no trouble to anyone. Only I'll take Seryoza and the little one. No, you can't forgive me. I know it can't be forgiven. No, go away. You're too good. She held his hand in one burning hand while she pushed him away with the other. The nervous agitation of Alexey Alexandrovitch kept increasing, and had by now reached such a point that he ceased to struggle with it. He suddenly felt what he had regarded as nervous agitation was, on the contrary, a blissful spiritual condition that gave him all at once a new happiness he had never known. He did not think that the Christian law that he had been all his life trying to follow enjoined him to forgive and love his enemies. But a glad feeling of love and forgiveness for his enemies filled his heart. He knelt down, and laying his head in the curve of her arm, which burned him as with fire through the sleeve, he sobbed like a little child. She put her arm around his head, moved towards him, and with defiant pride lifted up her eyes. That is he. I knew him. Now forgive me, everyone, forgive me. They've come again. Why don't they go away? Oh, take these cloaks off me." The doctor unloosed her hands, carefully laying her on the pillow, and covered her up to the shoulders. She lay back submissively and looked before her with beaming eyes. "Remember one thing, that I needed nothing but forgiveness, and I want nothing more." "Why doesn't he come?" she said, turning to the door towards Vronsky. Do come, give him your hand." Vronsky came to the side of the bed, and seeing Anna, again hid his face in his hands. "Uncover your face. Look at him. He is a saint," she said. "Oh, uncover your face. Do uncover it," she said angrily. "Alexey Alexandrovitch, do uncover his face. I want to see him." Alexey Alexandrovitch took Vronsky's hands and drew them away from his face, which was awful with the expression of agony and shame upon it. "Give him your hand. Forgive him." Alexey Alexandrovitch gave him his hand, not attempting to restrain the tears that streamed from his eyes. Thank God," she said. "Now everything is ready. Only to stretch my legs a little. There, that's capital. How badly these flowers are done. Not a bit like a violet," she said, pointing to the hangings. "My God, when will it end? Give me some morphine. Doctor, please, give me some morphine." And she tossed about on the bed. The doctor said that it was puerperal fever, and that it was 99 chances in 100 it would end in death. The whole day long there was fever, delirium, and unconsciousness. At midnight the patient lay without consciousness and almost without pulse. The end was expected every minute. Vronsky had gone home, but in the morning he came to inquire, and Alexey Alexandrovitch, meeting him in the hall, said, "Better stay, she might ask for you," and himself led him to his wife's boudoir. Towards morning there was a return again of excitement, rapid thought and talk, and again it ended in unconsciousness. On the third day it was the same thing, and the doctor said there was hope. That day Alexey Alexandrovitch went into the boudoir where Vronsky was sitting, and closing the door sat down opposite him. "Alexey Alexandrovitch," said Vronsky, feeling that a statement of the position was coming, "I can't speak. I can't understand. Spare me. However hard it is for you, believe me, it is more terrible for me." He would have risen, but Alexey Alexandrovitch took him by the hand and said, "I beg you to hear me out. It is necessary. I must explain my feelings, the feelings that have guided me and will guide me, so that you may not be in error regarding me. You know I had resolved on a divorce, and had even begun to take proceedings. I won't conceal from you that in beginning this, I was in uncertainty. I was in misery. I will confess that I was pursued by a desire to revenge myself on you and on her. When I got the telegram, I came here with the same feelings. I will say more. I longed for her death. But," he paused, pondering whether to disclose or not to disclose his feeling to him. "But I saw her and I forgave her. And the happiness of forgiveness has revealed to me my duty. I forgive completely. I would offer the other cheek. I would give my cloak if my coat be taken. I pray to God only not to take from me the bliss of forgiveness." Tears stood in his eyes, and the luminous, serene look in them impressed Vronsky. "This is my position. You can trample me in the mud, make me the laughing-stock of the world. I will not abandon her, and I will never utter a word of reproach to you. Alexey Alexandrovitch went on. My duty is clearly marked for me. I ought to be with her, and I will be. If she wishes to see you, I will let you know. But now, I suppose it would be better for you to go away. He got up, and sobs cut short his words. Vronsky, too, was getting up, and in a stooping, not yet erect posture, looked up at him from under his brows. He did not understand Alexey Alexandrovitch's feeling, but he felt that it was something higher and unattainable for him with his view of life. Chapter 18. After the conversation with Alexey Alexandrovitch, Vronsky went out onto the steps of the Karenin's house and stood still, with difficulty remembering where he was and where he ought to walk or drive. He felt disgraced, humiliated, guilty, and deprived of all possibility of washing away his humiliation. He felt thrust out of the beaten track along which he had so proudly and lightly walked till then. All the habits and rules of his life that had seemed so firm had turned out suddenly false and inapplicable. The betrayed husband, who had figured till that time as a pitiful creature, an incidental and somewhat ludicrous obstacle to his happiness, had suddenly been summoned by her herself, elevated to an awe-inspiring pinnacle, and on the pinnacle that husband had shown himself not malignant, not false, not ludicrous, but kind and straightforward and large. Vronsky could not but feel this, and the parts were suddenly reversed. Vronsky felt his elevation and his own abasement, his truth and his own falsehood. He felt that the husband was magnanimous even in his sorrow, while he had been base and petty in his deceit. But this sense of his own humiliation before the man he had unjustly despised made up only a small part of his misery. He felt unutterably wretched now, for his passion for Anna, which seemed to him of late to be growing cooler, now that he knew he had lost her forever, was stronger than ever it had been. He had seen all of her in her illness, had come to know her very soul, and it seemed to him that he had never loved her till then. And now, when he had learned to know her, to love her as she should be loved, he had been humiliated before her, and had lost her forever, leaving with her nothing of himself but a shameful memory. Most terrible of all had been his ludicrous, shameful position when Alexey Alexandrovitch had pulled his hands away from his humiliated face. He stood on the steps of the Karenin's house like one distraught, and did not know what to do. "A sledge, sir?" asked the porter. "Yes, a sledge." On getting home, after 3 sleepless nights, Vronsky, without undressing, lay down flat on the sofa, clasping his hands and laying his head on them. His head was heavy. Images, memories, and ideas of the strangest description followed one after another with extraordinary rapidity and vividness. First it was the medicine he had poured out for the patient and spilt over the spoon, then the midwife's white hands, then the odd posture of Alexey Alexandrovitch on the floor beside the bed. To sleep, to forget, he said to himself, with the serene confidence of a healthy man that, if he is tired and sleepy, he will go to sleep at once. And at the same instant his head did begin to feel drowsy, and he began to drop off into forgetfulness. The waves of the sea of unconsciousness had begun to meet over his head, when, all at once, it was as though a violent shock of electricity passed over him. He started so that he leaped up on the springs of the sofa, and leaning on his arms, got in a panic onto his knees. His eyes were wide open, as though he had never been asleep. The heaviness in his head and the weariness in his limbs that he had felt just a minute before had suddenly gone. "You may trample me in the mud," he heard Alexey Alexandrovitch's words, and saw him standing before him, and saw Anna's face with its burning flush and glittering eyes, gazing with love and tenderness, not at him, but at Alexey Alexandrovitch. He saw his own, as he fancied, foolish and ludicrous figure when Alexey Alexandrovitch took his hands away from his face. He stretched out his legs again and flung himself on the sofa in the same position and shut his eyes. "To sleep, to forget," he repeated to himself. But with his eyes shut, he saw more distinctly than ever Anna's face as it had been on the memorable evening before the races. That is not and will not be, and she wants to wipe it out of her memory. But I cannot live without it. How can we be reconciled? How can we be reconciled? He said aloud, and unconsciously began to repeat these words. This repetition checked the rising up of fresh images and memories which he felt were thronging in his brain. But repeating words did not check his imagination for long. Again, in extraordinarily rapid succession, his best moments rose before his mind, and then his recent humiliation. "Take away his hands," Anna's voice says. He takes away his hands and feels the shame-struck and idiotic expression of his face. He still lay down, trying to sleep, though he felt there was not the smallest hope of it, and kept repeating stray words from some chain of thought, trying by this to check the rising flood of fresh images. He listened, and heard in a strange, mad whisper words repeated. "I did not appreciate it, did not make enough of it. I did not appreciate it, did not make enough of it." "What is this? Am I going out of my mind?" he said to himself. Perhaps. What makes men go out of their minds? What makes men shoot themselves? He answered himself, and opening his eyes, he saw with wonder an embroidered cushion beside him, worked by Varya, his brother's wife. He touched the tassel of the cushion and tried to think of Varya, of when he had seen her last. But to think of anything extraneous was an agonizing effort. "No, I must sleep." He moved the cushion up and pressed his head into it, but he had to make an effort to keep his eyes shut. He jumped up and sat down. "That's all over for me," he said to himself. "I must think what to do, what is left." His mind rapidly ran through his life apart from his love of Anna. Ambition, Serpuhovsky, society, the court. He could not come to a pause anywhere. All of it had meaning before, but now there was no reality in it. He got up from the sofa, took off his coat, undid his belt, and uncovering his hairy chest to breathe more freely, walked up and down the room. "This is how people go mad," he repeated, "and how they shoot themselves. To escape humiliation," he added. He went to the door and closed it. Then, with fixed eyes and clenched teeth, he went up to the table, took a revolver, looked round him, turned it to a loaded barrel, and sank into thought. For 2 minutes, his head bent forward with an expression of intense effort of thought, he stood with the revolver in his hand, motionless, thinking. "Of course," he said to himself, as though a logical, continuous, and clear chain of reasoning had brought him to an indubitable conclusion. In reality, this "of course" that seemed convincing to him was simply the result of exactly the same circle of memories and images through which he had passed 10 times already during the last hour. Memories of happiness lost forever. There was the same conception of the senselessness of everything to come in life, the same consciousness of humiliation. Even the sequence of these images and emotions was the same. "Of course," he repeated, when for the third time his thought passed again round the same spellbound circle of memories and images, and pulling the revolver to the left side of his chest, and clutching it vigorously with his whole hand, as it were, squeezing it in his fist, he pulled the trigger. He did not hear the sound of the shot, but a violent blow on his chest sent him reeling. He tried to clutch at the edge of the table, dropped the revolver, staggered, and sat down on the ground, looking about him in astonishment. He did not recognize his room, looking up from the ground at the bent legs of the table, at the waste-paper basket, and the tiger-skin rug. The hurried, creaking steps of the servant coming through the drawing-room brought him to his senses. He made an effort at thought, and was aware that he was on the floor, and seeing blood on the tiger-skin rug and on his arm, he knew he had shot himself. "Idiotic. Missed," he said, fumbling after the revolver. The revolver was close beside him. He saw it further off. Still feeling for it, he stretched out to the other side, and not being strong enough to keep his balance, fell over, streaming with blood. The elegant, whiskered manservant, who used to be continually complaining to his acquaintances of the delicacy of his nerves, was so panic-stricken on seeing his master lying on the floor that he left him losing blood while he ran for assistance. An hour later, Varya, his brother's wife, had arrived, and with the assistance of 3 doctors whom she had sent for in all directions, and who all appeared at the same moment, she got the wounded man to bed, and remained to care for him.